Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into some really key points
Yeah.
coming straight from source material you shared. It's excerpts discussing an interview with President Zelenskyy.
That's right.
Our mission, as always, is to sift through this, pull out the crucial bits, and help you get a quick handle on the different views and, well, significant events it talks about, especially regarding the war in Ukraine, and specifically the reported interactions, between President Zelenskyy and former President Donald Trump.
Exactly. We're looking at this particular source, what it reports about that dynamic, and the conflict through the lens of this specific interview reporting. It definitely points to some, let's say, clear tensions and disagreements.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The first thing the source brings up is military aid, and a really specific case.
Yeah, it mentions a project, I think it was involving 20,000 anti-drone missiles, air defense missiles.
Right, and the source reports Zelenskyy saying Ukraine really counted on this project. So it sounds like it was pretty important for their drone defense.
Yeah, not just like a nice to have, something they were reportedly depending on.
Okay, and here's where it gets interesting. The source claims that instead of Ukraine getting them, Trump directed those missiles to Middle East countries.
Yes, that's the claim. And the source quotes Zelenskyy reportedly describing them as not expensive, but it's special technology.
Special technology, okay.
And it adds that Zelenskyy reportedly heard from his defense minister that, yeah, they were moved to the Middle East. So the source uses this specific reported instance maybe as a way to show, potential bumps in the road for military support.
Got it. So beyond that specific aid package, the source also gets into Zelenskyy's broader message about the conflict itself and what Ukraine needs overall as he reportedly sees it.
It reports him characterizing Russia's goal as a complete destruction of life, just bringing ruins and death.
That's a stark framing.
It really emphasizes the existential threat, from Ukraine's perspective, as reported here. Zelenskyy reportedly stresses they have to keep resisting and thanks international partners.
And there's a warning in there, too, right? The source mentions him saying the Russians are preparing to continue the war, that they're basically ignoring all peace proposals.
Yeah, suggesting, based on this reporting, that Russia isn't genuinely looking for peace right now.
Okay.
And this leads to what the source says is a really urgent needs strengthening air defense, like right now.
Their defense is key.
Absolutely. Zelenskyy is reportedly looking for positive signals from the United States regarding air defense systems, and needs a response to a request they apparently made to buy systems. The source really flags air defense as a top priority for him.
And it's not just about receiving systems, is it? The source mentioned something about joint production.
That's right. Zelenskyy reportedly stressed how important joint production of air defense systems and missiles with European countries would be. He reportedly said it's vital for our whole Europe. So connecting Ukraine's defense directly to wider European security.
Okay, now, this next point seems like a really sharp contrast in how things are viewed. It's about an analogy Donald Trump reportedly used.
Ah, yes. The source says Trump compared the conflict to two young children fighting like crazy in a park.
Wow, kids fighting in a park.
Yeah, and suggesting sometimes you're better off letting them fight for a while.
Yeah.
That's the reported analogy.
Okay. And how does Zelenskyy reportedly react to that? I can only imagine.
Well, the source reports a complete rejection of it. He's quoted saying, "We are not playing in the park with the Russians like two boys, two kids."
Right.
He reportedly pushes back hard on calling Putin a kid, describes him instead as a maniac, and even a murderer who came to the park to kill kids. The language reported here is, well, incredibly strong.
And to really underscore how different this is from a park fight, the source includes this really heart-wrenching story Zelenskyy apparently shared.
Yeah, the anecdote about the man who lost his wife and 3 children in a missile strike.
It's just devastating.
The man reportedly told Zelenskyy, "Every morning I'm looking for my family. I still feel that it was a nightmare. I feel physical pain. It is limitless." Just unimaginable pain. The source uses that, to show the immense human tragedy, a world away from the reported park analogy.
And the source claims Trump used this analogy, not just out loud somewhere, but in the Oval Office, to Zelenskyy.
That's what the source claims, yes. And that he even told Putin afterwards that he'd used it. The source really presents this whole episode, the analogy, the reaction, the anecdote, as key to seeing the massive gap between these reported perspectives on what's actually happening.
Yeah, a huge gap. Okay, sticking with Trump's reported views, the source also touches on his belief about who's winning the war.
Right. The source reports Zelenskyy confirming that Trump definitely believes that Russia is winning the war.
Definitely believes.
According to the source, Zelenskyy says Trump says it all the time, has said it publicly, and shared it with people around him. So the source presents this as a consistent view attributed to Trump.
But Zelenskyy obviously disagrees.
Strongly. The source includes his direct counter. It's not true, he reportedly adds, something like, "Trust me, we understand the Russians much better than the Americans understand the Russians."
It's interesting.
And then, reportedly, specifically, better than Trump.
Okay.
The source also conveys Zelensky's reported description of Russians as, well, bad, they are evil people, they just want death, destruction, and ruin, and includes this reported plea to stop with the both sides crap.
So frustration with any kind of perceived equivalence.
Seems like it, yeah, based on the reporting. And he reportedly counters Trump's alleged belief that Putin wants peace by saying, no, Putin doesn't want to stop the war. These are all presented in the source as Zelenskyy directly challenging the views he attributes to Trump.
Right. This all seems to feed into what the source describes as a pretty turbulent relationship overall. It even recounts a specific Oval Office visit that apparently went badly. Spiraling out of control, I think was the phrase used.
Yeah, that sounds intense.
What did Trump reportedly say to Zelenskyy in that meeting? According to the source, anyway.
Well, the source details some really blunt statements reportedly made by Trump. Things like, you're right now not in a very good position, and you've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position.
Oof. That's direct.
Also, you don't have the cards right now. And apparently, you're playing cards, you're gambling with the lives of millions of people, and even you're gambling with World War II. Really high-stakes language attributed to him.
Wow. And Zelensky's reaction, according to the source?
Reportedly, he just said, it's quite complicated. The source says Zelenskyy maintained that the cameras don't lie about the tension in the room.
Okay.
And that he felt he was just being very honest and open about his country fighting for its life against this, quote, giant with all that evil. So he reportedly stands by how he presented things.
And then the source offers its own interpretation of what was allegedly going on beneath the surface there.
Yes, and we need to be clear. This is the source's claim about Trump's supposed motive. It alleges the plan was to bully Zelenskyy into surrender, then steal the minerals from Ukraine in a mineral deal, and after that, give Putin the other parts of Ukraine.
So the U.S. and Russia splitting Ukraine.
Essentially, yeah, as two hegemonic powers is how the source describes this alleged plan, followed by Trump doing business deals with Putin and Russia. Again, this is purely the source's description of an alleged strategy behind that meeting. We're just reporting what the source says.
Understood. Okay, shifting gears slightly. The source also mentions ceasefires. Specifically, Ukraine's reported stance.
Right. It reports Zelenskyy told ABC that his country is ready for a ceasefire and they've always been ready.
So an openness there from Ukraine's side, reportedly.
That's what the source indicates, yeah. He's also quoted saying, we've agreed to an unconditional ceasefire, Putin has not, which, as reported, puts the onus for the lack of a ceasefire on Putin.
Got it. What about the role of the U.S. president? The source mentions Zelensky's reported view on their influence.
Yeah, it says he's reportedly convinced that the U.S. president has all the power and enough leverage to bring European leaders together in support of Ukraine.
So seeing the U.S. president as absolutely crucial.
Definitely. The source quotes him saying, European leaders are reportedly looking at President Trump as a leader for the free world. And they're waiting for him, so he has to do it. He must. That reportedly places a huge weight of expectation on the U.S. president's shoulders to lead.
Okay, and one last point from the source, the impact of U.S. military aid itself.
Yeah.
How critical is it perceived to be?
The source includes Zelensky's reported view on this, which is pretty stark. Without U.S. military aid, there's a greater chance Russia will win. And Ukraine will suffer much more loss of life, much more. So the source reports this perceived direct critical link between continued U.S. support and Ukraine's ability to fight back and, frankly, survive with fewer casualties.
Right. So let's try to wrap this up. This deep dive into the source material has really walked us through some major reported points. The controversy around that specific missile aid.
The starkly different views on the nature of the war itself, the park analogy versus the maniac description.
Yeah, Ukraine's reported readiness for a ceasefire versus Putin's reported position.
The perceived power and responsibility of the U.S. president.
And that really reportedly difficult dynamic between Zelenskyy and Trump, including that Oval Office meeting, and, importantly, the source's claim about an alleged underlying plan.
And trying to navigate these incredibly complex global situations, especially when you see viewpoints presented as intensely opposed as they are in this source material. Well, it really requires you to grapple with these different perspectives.
Absolutely right.
Sources like the one we've looked at today, they give you these snapshots, these reported views and interactions. They offer some insight, into the incredibly challenging landscape around this conflict.
Yeah, exactly. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? When you see these interpretations of the conflict, the people involved, the stakes, interpretations that are just worlds apart, reportedly. There is that bigger question. Given that intensity, those vastly different realities described in the source, what does it actually take for different sides in any huge global disagreement to find any common ground at all, assuming that ground even exists? What is it that makes some perspectives seem so fundamentally irreconcilable? Something to definitely ponder.